Now streaming on WPTV.
A new president, a new era.
Now it's time to turn the page, as we've done throughout our history.
It's Inauguration Day. The world is watching.
Given the events of last week, that this inauguration preparation has to be different than any other inauguration.
From the calls for calm.
That we are a country that is better than this. We're bigger than what is happening.
To the calls for action.
He has done something so serious that there should be prosecution against him.
Palm Beach County at the center of this transition.
The president will be moving to Palm Beach, or at least attempt to move to Palm Beach after he leaves office. We will not tolerate that kind of violence. Law enforcement is prepared.
Plus, a presidential promise in the coronavirus pandemic.
COVID is a killer, and the Biden-Harris administration will spare no effort to make sure people get vaccinated.
And hope for our students and teachers.
We must be dedicated to a strong public education system.
History is happening in our nation's capital.
There's never been anything we can't do when we do it together.
Live streaming coverage with WPTV's team of political experts starts now.
Again, Michael Williams here with our analyst as you're looking live at the United States Capitol and upcoming the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. Our experts joining us, News Channel 5 political analyst Mariana Mancuso and Brian Crowley, and the Urban League of Palm Beach County President and CEO Patrick Franklin. And in just a few moments, Virginia Baker, the Palm Beach County Administrator, will join us as we look to the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden in just under a half hour. Let's pivot our conversation as we look on at the President-elect. Patrick, we'll begin again with you and what it may mean for Floridians in terms of policy prescriptions on everything from COVID to education and beyond. What are you looking for from this administration, sir?
Well, my two biggest things are the COVID relief bill, that a robust bill will come out to support our families and small businesses.
And by the way, Patrick, just forgive me as I do a little play-by-play. Senator Roy Blunt, who's been overseeing, the Republican from Missouri, the inauguration ceremony. He was in charge of that, and he is speaking now. And I'll try and give you a little play-by-play as faces come up. Please continue with your thought about expectations from the new administration, sir. Yeah, the COVID relief bill would be front and center for me as far as how what type of package will come out of the Congress and for the president to sign to come out to help our families that are struggling in small businesses and really help the economy overall to come back. People need that support and relief right now, and I'm looking forward to that being a major priority coming out of the Biden administration. I'm also looking for secondary things like the voting rights bill, the John Lewis bill, to come out. That's been sitting on McConnell's desk for a long time. But right now, front and center for me is COVID. We need COVID relief. We need support in a huge way. Mr. Franklin, again with the Urban League, thank you for being with us. We so appreciate it as we have our other guests, Brian Crowley and Mariana Mancuso, against Senator Roy Blunt. As you look on at the former Transportation Secretary for President Trump, Elaine Chao, and her husband, the powerful, but soon to be, although he'll still be very powerful, Senate Majority Leader, soon to be Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. I want to talk to all of you with all the pieces of history of this day, as we've talked about, as we point to the noon hour. A woman and a woman of color about to become the Vice President of the United States. Mariana.
Ladies, you better put shoes on because there's glass everywhere. This is a very exciting day in American history to see a female Vice President of the United States of America, and I couldn't be more proud.
Brian, perspective on that historic moment.
Well, it's absolutely a great moment for the country. And one of the things I say to people when they are feeling like everything is going to hell, you know, as a kid who graduated from high school in 1968, I vividly remember 68. I remember that's also the year I enlisted in the Marine Corps. You know, it was a very tumultuous year, and life since then has changed dramatically. So I always look to see progress, and things can get really, really ugly, and Lord knows 2020 and 2021 have been extraordinarily ugly years so far, 2021. But the steady progress of society continues to move. It's often like this, but it still continues to move. And today we have a first in our vice president. And
as you look on, by the way, Brian, just to, for those of you at home looking on live at the Capitol, former Presidents Barack Obama, you saw former President Bush, former President Bill Clinton, and the former First Ladies, Michelle Obama, Laura Bush, and Hillary Clinton. All of them will be together with President-elect Biden, and of course, soon to be former President Vice President Mike Pence, excuse me, as you look on at Kamala Harris. One can only imagine the thoughts on this historic day for her and the President-elect. Brian, continue to wrap and button up that thought. You were speaking eloquently about the sense of moment.
Sadly, however, in these great moments that we have, there is this, I still think, relatively small percentage of people who see this as outrage, who think it's wrong, who believe in white supremacy and have all these great fears, and they're still there, and that's part of what's been going on. And I think it really came to a head when President Obama was elected for those folks, and they thought their world was coming to an end. And for those of us who are thrilled that there's a woman vice president of color, sadly, there's a group of people out there who just think it's a horrific end to the country they know. It's nonsense, but sadly, it's true.
At about 11:55, perhaps a little earlier, we know many of you are having a multiple screen experience right now watching the network coverage as we joined you and talked about the Florida aspect with President Trump's arrival and that of the First Lady and much of their family. You saw that. We're now streaming coverage from the Capitol. We will go fully to the inaugural ceremony, then come back. We'll break away fully to the inaugural ceremony as opening prayers are being given. And of course, many of you watching that on your big screen. We would continue to ask those of you who have questions and concerns. Recent polling said people put COVID at the top of their list. Send us your questions, send us your comments, send us what's on your plate. You've heard Mr. Franklin talk about COVID, about the need for jobs, small businesses and the like. What for you at home do you now look to you say, this is number one on my plate that I need for the betterment of myself and family in terms of us all trying to dig out from 2020 and COVID and what it's meant and the hurt and pain it's caused. We welcome your comments. We want your comments. Please send them so we can have response to that. I would briefly, within that context of COVID, here's what the president-elect said about his commitment on COVID just last week and the distribution of vaccines.
The Trump administration's policy of holding back close to half the supply of the vaccines available did not make sense. Our administration will release the vast majority of the vaccines when they're available, so more people can get vaccinated quickly while still retaining a small reserve for any unseen shortage or delays. If we're getting more people vaccinated, then we need more vaccination sites. That's why we're going to harness the full resources of the federal government to establish thousands of community vaccination centers. On my first day in office, I'll instruct the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to begin setting up the first of these centers.
The Vice President-elect taking the oath of office. We're going to cut away from our coverage and fully vest ourselves in watching the inauguration as Kamala Harris makes history.
Oh, damn it. Great.
Michael Williams here again. We're trying to clear up some audio. We know many of you are watching this big screen experience. Oh, there we go. Go back to inauguration coverage.
Oh, this land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, this land was made for you and me, you and me. Oh, America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood. From sea to shining sea. Una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. This land was made for you and me.
Jennifer Lopez.
Well, that was great.
Exiting the
shining and
dais, Senator Amy Klobuchar.
First inauguration.
Matt, are we back up, Matt?
America, where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts.
No.
With that,
Senator Amy Klobuchar joking it may be a first where Jennifer Lopez was a warm-up act for the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts. As we wrap this, because we want to listen fully into the inauguration of the President-elect and his remarks as you look at the Chief Justice. Brief 15 seconds, then we'll join all of our guests on the other side. Patrick, beginning with you, sir.
Michael, I want to go back to the question you had about how the first Black vice president.
Sir, stand by because I believe we are preparing. The Chief Justice is standing now, so I believe that we are now at the moment of the inauguration of the president. So we'll hold our thoughts for the other side. As President-elect Joe Biden, 78 years old, with his wife Jill Biden and his family around him, prepares to take the oath of office as the nation's 46th president, we'll listen in and to his inaugural address, Vice President Kamala Harris. She has already taken her oath of office. Let's listen. We'll join you on the other side.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
My fellow Americans, a moment we have all been waiting for. It is now my great privilege and high honor to be the first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once in a century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make healthcare secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, Through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America. We've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. If you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay at bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, or rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. That's what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic, those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. We'll honor them for becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together, we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch, but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
The 46th President of the United States delivering his remarks to the inaugural audience. Of course, so many in Congress joining him there this day. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris assuming the oaths of office just before the noon hour, as constitutionally prescribed that they must assume those oaths before the noon hour. The President, a theme of unity, talking this day, of history, a nod to Kamala Harris as the first woman and woman of color to become the the Vice President of the United States, the second highest office in the land. He talked about the fragility of democracy, saying democracy has prevailed against the violence of those who sought to shake our foundation. He said, it's a great nation and we are a good people, said President Biden in his inaugural address. Again, talking about the defense of democracy that, given the events of the last few weeks, takes on new resonance as you continue to look on. Let you continue to listen to the singer Garth Brooks coming here. We'll continue to listen and we'll be rejoined by, among others, Virginia Baker, Palm Beach County Administrator, with her perspective both as an administrator and as a woman of color on today's History Making Day. Brian Crowley, Mariana Mancuso, Patrick Franklin. Let's listen in. Garth Brooks.
Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Amen. Garth Brooks, his rendition of Amazing Grace, shaking hands with Vice President Kamala Harris as the inauguration ceremony itself will wrap. It'll be an afternoon where, in about 2 hours' time, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and the former first couples, Presidents Obama, Clinton, Bush, along with the former First Ladies, Michelle Obama, as you see Garth Brooks hug former President Bush, the former First Ladies, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, all of them will head to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, where they shall place a wreath. As we continue our coverage here locally, we are joined by, among others, Virginia Baker, the Palm Beach County Administrator, someone who knows more than a bit about breaking glass ceilings on her way to a position of such magnitude and, in these particular days, responsibility in the midst of COVID. And we're joined by Virginia Baker this day. Of course, our other analysts will be joining us in a moment, but we know she has a busy schedule as the inauguration chairman, Senator Roy Blunt, takes the stage again. We'll continue to keep the picture up, but Ms. Baker, your thoughts, both as a top administrator in South Florida, a woman of high profile herself, and on this history-making day in so many ways, including that of the first woman and woman of color to become the Vice President of the United States. I know you have much that must be going through your mind. Please share it with us right now. Ms. Baker? Ms. Baker, can you hear me? We'll try to get back to Ms. Baker in a moment, make sure she can hear me. Ms. Baker, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can. I was introducing you as a woman of immense responsibility in our county, especially in this day and age of COVID, and as a woman who's broken her own glass ceilings on this day of history. And among the historic threads here today, of course, a woman and the first woman of color to assume the vice presidency. You told me touchingly just days ago, as a little girl, you could never have imagined such a thing. As we look on at Kamala Harris, your thoughts this day?
Michael, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me back to speak today on this historic moment. And I am just full. I am full with pride. I'm just very emotional right now. And to know that through God's amazing grace, we stand here as a United States that is being inclusive all around. And I can't even imagine what our young girls can achieve now that we have our first woman of color, our first African American Asian woman as vice president of the United States. Yet next it will be the president for that person, as well as God only knows what else we can accomplish. It is there, it is real. Our young people can look at her and say, I too can achieve this goal. I am just so very, very proud of her today. I'm proud of this country. I know that we are continuing to grow in our country with a number of nationalities, races, ethnicities, and we can just accomplish anything we want to accomplish in this country if we work together.
Your early thoughts on President Biden's inaugural address, where the overarching theme was one of unity, one of a great many challenges, including to democracy itself, but one where he said, I'm a president for all Americans moving forward with the great challenges. Your response to the inaugural address you just heard?
Well, my response again is working together in our country will continue to make us, first of all, it'll heal us, and it will allow us to take that rightful place of leading the rest of the world and to taking care of our own. We're a very diverse country. And so as a result, I think the President Biden is moving forward with ensuring not only that his executive level is integrated, diverse, inclusive, but he's also moving forward with this cabinet. And so I believe that sends a message to the rest of America that we must embrace each other. We're Americans first.
One of those young women you were talking about, Amanda Gorman, reciting a poem. And we know many of you at home, this is a two-screen experience. You're watching the coverage on NBC, on television. So we're bringing you this additional coverage with voices from our community, such as Ms. Baker, the Palm Beach County Administrator. A day of symbolism, but also a day of substance in so many ways. The president will hit the ground running already with many executive orders. He's already pushing hard on a $1.9 trillion recovery plan. The next piece, he says, of our recovery from COVID and trying to boost the economy, distribute vaccines. For a moment, away from the symbolism and the emotions of the moment, talk with your administrator hat on with your specific ongoing concerns and hopes for the ongoing response, rollout, and vaccinations and COVID response for our community, our businesses, for individuals, for people in need of the vaccine. What do you, with your administrator hat, see and want from the Biden administration in the early days, Administrator Baker?
Well, what I see is that this president is going to hit the ground running when it comes to addressing the need we have for vaccine here in our country. I do want people to understand he's not on tomorrow going to be able to send out sufficient vaccines for all of us to be covered at one given time. It is going to take a minute to ramp up and provide that vaccine to our appropriate community. But I do believe that we will begin to see direction at a national level that will show us that we as a country can resolve this pandemic and bring back our economy and keep our citizens safe. So I believe this president will hit the ground running. He will make sure the economy is going to start working properly for all of us. The vaccines will come in and assist our communities and keep our elderly as well as our first responders and all of our residents safe. So I am looking forward to what this administration will assist our communities in accomplishing.
Ms. Baker, what does closing the gap and dealing with the issues which he spoke about, as Armanda Gorman reciting a poem wraps up to the applause of President Biden and the august audience there? Imagine that for that young lady, that moment of history for her. What does continuing to close the racial divide in terms of income equality, job equality, housing needs, what does that as a practical matter, broadly speaking right now in this state, look like for a Palm Beach County? A Biden administration committing to that, but what does it look like substantively from your point of view?
I think what it looks like from my standpoint for Palm Beach County is that we continue to invest in our various communities, that we provide housing for all levels of income, race, ethnicity, that we provide proper training for our kids so that when they graduate from high school, if they're not going to college, there are plumbers, our electricians, that we open the fairness gate when it comes to loans being given for people to purchase homes in our county, that we don't redline our communities, that we make sure that we're including the level of housing that will allow our various families, regardless of their income level, into communities that have schools that are well equipped and well financed so that all of our children are given the same equal opportunity. I believe that we need to ensure that as we grow our businesses, that we are being inclusive, that we're diverse. We provide everyone an equal opportunity. I think hard work and cooperation among all of us and understanding each other. Cultures are different. And I think how we can move forward is to make sure that we're talking to each other and understanding what our cultural values are. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want love. We want to be able to provide for our family, and we want the best for our kids.
Ms. Baker, Palm Beach County Administrator, I will end where we began. You saying that you could never have imagined this day. What, for the rest of your days, which we hope will be many, many happy decades, will be your message to family and to other young ladies and men? It's not just about a woman. It's about in America where we say anything's possible. Today, we're reminded again with a 78-year-old who, after 50 years in politics, is the president of the United States, meeting a historically challenging moment, and at his side, the first woman and woman of color. It's not just a message. We tend to silo that and say it's a message just for young women. This is really a message for America today from your perspective. I suspect your closing thoughts on that, what you will always take from this day and your message going forward from what you've seen this day.
From this day, I take dream big, and your dreams can be accomplished. If you work hard and given an opportunity, you'll be able to achieve any goal that you set for yourself. Just make sure that you're being inclusive, you're being fair, and we must all love each other. We're all Americans.
Virginia Baker, Palm Beach County Administrator, on that eloquent note, we know you have a day job administrating a sprawling county. We thank you for taking a few moments to share your vital perspective as a community leader, as a big voice in our community. Thank you for your time. I will certainly be in touch as we continue to look at the substantive issues like COVID-19 rollout, where communities such as our burgeoning, growing one will work, as you see former President Bush and Clinton there today, along with former President Barack Obama, all there to celebrate the inauguration of Joe Biden. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Baker, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All the best. We will now continue with our News Channel 5 political analyst, as Reverend Sylvester Beeman of the Episcopal Church in Wilmington, Delaware, where Joe Biden hails from, had delivered the benediction. Of course, many of you have seen that on your big screen. If you have continuing questions for us, as you look at now former Vice President Mike Pence, who attended the inauguration ceremonies, where the now former President Donald Trump decided not to, for the first time since Andrew Johnson in the post-Civil War era, declined to attend. From here, you will see President Biden, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and the former presidents who I've mentioned, Obama, Bush, and Clinton, and their spouses, the former First Ladies, heading to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery to lay a wreath. There'll be a virtual parade. Of course, even with COVID alone, there had been an urging for people not to come to Washington. Given the security concerns of January 6th and beyond, it is ringed by National Guardsmen and women on a day for a peaceful transfer of power. More than a few have commented that it's sad that it takes 25,000 troops to help ensure peaceful transfer of power. Let me pick up with, as we look at the Capitol, as the inaugural ceremony itself begins to wind down. We'll begin, Brian, your thoughts on what you heard today, what you saw, what you heard.
Well, one of my first thoughts is, having been to several inaugurals, the idea that this inaugural required 25,000 National Guard troops and basically a shutting down of the Capitol. It's like it's that part of democracy is a very sad part of the day. But on the other hand, we, under these very trying circumstances, a new president took the oath of office, and we did pass the baton on to the next president, and so that went as our founders envisioned. So there's two sides to today's coin: the National Guard part of it, and of course the wonderful ceremony that they had with the swearing in of Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States.
Patrick Franklin, President and CEO of the Urban League of Palm Beach County, the high points of the inaugural address and day thus far, your thoughts, what touched you, moved you, got you thinking? Thank you for being with us, Mr. Franklin.
No, thank you, Michael. Right off the beginning, day of renewal, day for democracy. Democracy is precious and fragile. We witnessed that. And just the peaceful transfer of power. I think it was a wonderful day. I can't believe in my lifetime, in my short lifetime, that I've seen the first African-American president and the first female woman of color as vice president. That is just astounding to feel that and to bear it. And I agree with Brian. I've been to several inaugurations, and I know we the people miss the absolute joy of inauguration right now. The thousands of people that would have been in that city right now, the number of people that would have experienced and the joy that would have been shared there right now is missed. It's missed sorely right now. And I just think it's a great day for America, and it's a great day for democracy. Democracy has prevailed.
Thank you, sir, and continue to be with us. We also have from the inaugural address, Mariana, we'll let you respond to it, a part of that message of unity from a newly inaugurated president, as you see him alongside his vice president, Kamala Harris, and standing at salute for their new commander-in-chief. You see Air Force men, soldiers, sailors, and airmen all represented there. Of course, his own son, who died, Bo, in the service, had served overseas as well. You see the president and the first lady, Jill Biden, an educator by training, who are now leaving the inaugural stage, where they'll be greeted by dignitaries to make their way to Arlington. There'll be a virtual parade. There will be a brief moment near the White House. There'll be a review as the military passes by, but it'll be, of course, abbreviated much because of COVID, but also because of the security concerns. As you see the vice president leaving the stage with her husband. Let's listen to part of what President Biden had to say. And as always, for you at home, we welcome your comments, your thoughts on this day, as we, if you've been with us throughout, covered the arrival of President Trump, who now the new center of his life and perhaps political universe, Mar-a-Lago, as he faces an uncertain future given the events of the last few weeks, a second impeachment, an upcoming Senate trial. But for the moment, the focus to the new president, the 46, who talked about, as Patrick said, the fragility of democracy and his absolute vow to preserve it. And let's listen in part to President Biden, and then we'll have Mariana react.
And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh. all of us, let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured.
President Biden, a theme of unity, but also acknowledging challenges where even the truth, he said at one point, you heard him there, and he talked about it later, where COVID, where domestic terrorism, where our democracy, our truth under attack, as we see people with different takeaways that have led to such division of late. But again, through all of that, he said democracy stands strong, and he took his oath of office to continue to preserve that democracy. And he made a point, Mariana, of talking about for all Americans. In fact, one of the most telling things I thought the takeaway was where he said at one point, let me go to it. To those who did not vote for me, take a measure. If you still disagree with me, so be it. That's democracy. But do so peaceably. But know that I will be a president for all Americans. Mariana, his comments, your follow-on thoughts on the high points, the moments of the day thus far.
From the very beginning, from Joe Biden's campaign, he has displayed a message of unity. He has vowed to be a president for all Americans. He's worked hard to kind of quell the division that we've seen between Republicans and Democrats. And I really applaud him in his message today. And I think that he offers one not only of hope that we saw with Barack Obama when he came into office in 2008 for his first term as president, but also he hopes to look to the future. And, you know, without saying it, he did say that, in fact, it is morning again in America.
Christina writes, what's wrong? One of you writing, and what's wrong with trying to unite and getting through these times together, utilizing all our strengths? I've long argued that we in society, and media is part of that, we tend to focus like moths to the flame, to the most strident voices on the left and the most strident voices on the right. When I talk to folks in my everyday life, they want to take care of their families, have a chance for good jobs, have meaningful work in their community. They're not the Americans that you would think are the only Americans when we, including the media, sometimes run here and there. And that woman's comment, Christina, seemed to say that there is a real hunger for a great many Americans whose voices never make it into media on TV to indeed get together. That may sound a bit Pollyanna-ish, but Mr. Franklin and then Brian, pick up on that theme. Do you agree or disagree with me? Am I being too rose-colored glasses in this moment about where we are?
No, I think we have to give unity a try. We have to come up with ways to help each other and to really come to a meaning of compromise and understand that there is just totally wrong and totally right. I'm looking forward to a united front from everyone. I think everyone needs to, like the president said, tone it down, turn the heat down, and come forward and help us move forward. We have too many issues that we're facing right now that need everyone from both sides to come together and solve. We're hurting. We are definitely hurting right now, and it's going to take more than what we've done to move forward. And it's going to take everyone that's around, everyone that cares, everyone that's involved to step forward and says, I will make a difference, and I'm here to help.
But Mr. Franklin, as we now have a former president just miles away from where I sit in Mar-a-Lago, where he shall be, at least for the time being, and plans to stay here, although some people on Palm Beach Island say there's covenants that don't allow him to stay there permanently. We'll see how much of a fight that develops into. But nonetheless, supporters of President Trump will say, if we want to talk about unity, then why are we talking what they call, a quote, rushed second impeachment and now the prospect of a Senate trial? They say that doesn't sound much like moving past, moving beyond. And indeed, President-elect, now President Biden, said Congress will act through its will, but he didn't seem, he certainly was not overtly saying, I absolutely push for this impeachment. He too wants to move on and in fact is concerned that his agenda will be bogged down by impeachment. But President Trump's supporters say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like moving on. What do you say to that critique from President Trump's supporters?
Well, I would welcome all the Trump supporters to come forward and lend a hand towards unity. I think this is one thing that we're overlooking is called accountability, and let the process take its path. But we're going to need ex-President Trump. We're going to need his supporters and followers. We're going to need everyone to come together. It won't happen unless we have those who don't think in the same perspective to come forward. And I invite him. I invite the ex-president to step forward and say, how can I make this country better? And maybe he may have a different mindset to say, I understand. I'm waiting.
Brian, I'd like you to respond to this following statement. Speaking of working across aisles, a local Republican Congressman, Brian Mast from Congressional District 18, covering Martin, St. Lucie, and parts of Palm Beach County, released this statement. I'll read it, quote it to all of you, and then Brian respond. This is from Brian Mast. Today, I attended the inauguration of President Joe Biden with the backdrop of a dystopian like Washington, D.C., where military outnumbered civilians by an unthinkable magnitude, Mast writes. We must be better than this as a nation, building our country up through a debate of words and ideas rather than tearing it down with violence. I did not vote for President Biden, Congressman Mast goes on to say, but I am committed to working with him when we can find areas of agreement, especially on the issues that are most important to me personally. Brian?
Well, I can only take that statement seriously until I see the next series of fundraising emails from Brian Mast, which throw out the same vitriol that we've been hearing for the last couple of years about, socialists taking over the country and, send me some money so I can save us from the horrors of the Democrats. So, it's a fine public statement, and if he means it and he moves forward with that, but what also happens behind the scenes, I use that term loosely, and this is not unique to Brian Mast, and it's certainly not unique to Republicans, but the kind of emails and social media they participate in, where they're sending out trying to raise money by going after our worst instincts, not our best instincts.
But Brian, all as incisive points, as Patrick said, as you've said too, notwithstanding everything you just said, Democrats play that same game. So it's worth reminding us it takes two to tango. It's been a pretty ugly, nasty debate on both sides.
No, absolutely, and I get similar emails trying to raise money on the Democratic side of things too. I'm just couching it within an email that I got from the Mast campaign yesterday with his statement today, and he's had a whole series of emails fundraising emails he sent out over the past 5 or 6 days that have been throwing salt. So what you do essentially in private, and I put that in quotes,
as we look on at House Speaker,
is very different than your public statement.
Precisely. And we look on at House Speaker Pelosi, who in a recent 60 Minutes interview with Leslie Stahl took a bit of umbrage when she said, you too, whether it was resistance to COVID legislation where she wanted more, Republicans less, that could also butting heads. And of course, it's the other person butting heads, not me. And it was an interesting exchange, very much. Virginia Baker, I hope you got to join it. We'll have some of her sound. To Virginia Baker, if you're listening, thank you. She has a county to administrate, but I hope we will turn around some of the reflective comments of Virginia Baker, our Palm Beach County administrator, who joined us. But Mariana, come back into the conversation as you look at House Speaker Pelosi, who will now work with a Democratic Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, the longtime Republican Majority Leader, now in the minority, as we look at this moment where the President and First Lady will descend from the Capitol and again begin to make their way in relatively short order. By around 2:30, they will begin to make their way to other parts of this day, which will include a wreath laying, as you see President Obama or former President Obama and the former First Lady Michelle Obama, to also be joined by the Clintons and George W. Bush and Laura Bush, former presidents, all together, all with the now notable exception of the immediately former President Trump, who declined to attend, but all of them showing unity with the new president and commander-in-chief. They'll be with him at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier throughout the day. Of course, Vice President Biden for President Obama served for him for 8 years. Mariana, jump into the argument about everybody wants to say you first. I think Mr. Franklin's great point. There's a we element that everybody's got to do that. It's always, well, you go first, you go first. Not a great civics lesson sometimes for our children, Mariana.
Yes, no, we should all go first together. That's what this is. And that's what Biden's speech was encouraging Americans to come together. Now's the time to unite. Now's the time to put away the divisive politics, the rhetoric, the red meat, the things that elicit emotions and not the good kind, and look ahead to a brighter future for America. But we can't have that if we're going to point fingers on either side of the aisle. This is a chance for us to turn it all around, but it can't be done unless we all come together and work together.
Vice President Pence leaving the Capitol, and former Vice President Pence and now Vice President Kamala Harris departing the Capitol as well. Again, much of today will be virtual events, a virtual parade, many flags, thousands up and down the National Mall representing Americans. Closer to the White House later in the day, there'll be parts of what would seem to you at home more traditional pieces of an inaugural parade, but greatly, greatly telescoped in size, Patrick Franklin, as we look on. Back to this theme, and then I'm going to want to just for a moment as we kind of connect the very interesting dots that connect now Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach County, the new home for former President Trump to D.C., in a way that our communities never remotely experienced this connection. Of course, we had the Kennedy compound when he was president, but in this time of these countervailing forces, and you've got what's going on in Washington today with this other image, and perhaps we can call up footage of President Trump's arrival in Palm Beach County at about 10:45 this morning. And it's very interesting to me, the dynamic that we're going to be seeing, Mr. Franklin, in the coming days and weeks as we look at Florida's role at the center of pronouncements, policy efforts to continue to lead a party even in the midst of impeachment. As you look at the former president, Trump, he was still president when he came off Air Force One at 11 o'clock. That to me is going to be a very amazing piece of the dynamic. And how do Florida politicians like a Ron DeSantis and a Marco Rubio, how do they interact with them? They have their own ambitions, obviously. How do we move forward? Let me put that to all three of you, and then we're going to go to an interesting piece about the future of Mar-a-Lago. First, you, Mr. Franklin.
Well, I mean, Michael, there is a very, very strong support for the ex-president right now. I've never seen an ex-president have so much support in leaving office as I've witnessed today. This is something that we've never seen before. I agree with Marianne, is that this is going to be a revolving door at Mar-a-Lago for all the Republican politicians to come in to get approval, get sanctioned, whatever it may be. But Mar-a-Lago is going to be an interesting place to observe here in Palm Beach County. I think in the oncoming months and maybe within the next year, it's going to be interesting to see just how much power the ex-president has in the party. Is yet to be seen, because you have so many issues that are outstanding, so many legal issues that are outstanding that has to be addressed. And
among them his Senate trial upcoming.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just about to begin now. Many issues are going to surface now, and the legal battles are going to start. But also, how does he come out of that? What's the end result after some of these things are done? Will he be stronger? Will he be have less perceived power? We don't know yet. But for right now, we do know one thing. He has immense power with a lot of supporters and a lot of voters. We know that.
Mariana?
He does. And, you know, to Mr. Franklin's point, it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that power and what happens. You know, at one point earlier in the broadcast, we were talking, what does he do now as next president? Does he try to start a new party? Does he start a news channel? What does he do? Does he play more golf? We're not sure. But at one point I thought to myself, what if he ran to become the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida? And I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't even know if that's a thing. I haven't even heard rumors about that. All I'm saying is that there's a lot of unknowns, and we won't be able to really read the tea leaves until we've seen him out of office for the next month and seen what happens with this impeachment trial. I think that's really going to be the linchpin to his future, whether it goes one way or another of his involvement in politics.
And obviously the impeachment trial will be front page, but shorn of his social media accounts, at least for now, off the front pages, because obviously no longer president. So in that sense, how he navigates a dynamic where he will not be, as any president almost is, the center of daily attention. And I would say that was outsized for his administration. Brian, as we continue to navigate, we look at pictures from just a few hours ago when still as President Trump and the First Lady arriving in Palm Beach. Interesting how he'll navigate that. Interesting how Florida politicians beginning, but also every Republican will navigate with and around that. And of course, we don't know where the Senate trial will go, but it's fascinating.
You know, I think when all is said and done, that Trump may, of his own volition, fade. I don't think he'll do it right away, but I think he'll really turn more and more of his attention to his businesses. And he's got a number of lawsuits and investigations and things on state levels that he's going to have to deal with, as well as on federal levels. But I think for him, his legacy, certainly the presidency, but for him personally, I think an awful lot of his legacy is tied up in what he perceives as his business success. And I think it's going to be really important to him over the next few years to be really successful at his business. I'm not saying he's not going to do anything in Republican politics. And would he try to spin off his own party? Maybe, but only if he thinks he can make money doing it.
We'll have, by the way, we've had reporters out along Southern Boulevard. You'll be hearing from Trump supporters. You'll be hearing Biden supporters. We're looking to find reaction from everybody in the community as we give you the second screen experience across all our streaming platforms. A good point to remind you, getting home. What, for those of you who support President Trump, what would you like to see? Would you like to see him be able to run again in 2024? What about those of you who are just looking for a different conversation? And what about your needs in terms of COVID relief, other kinds of economic relief? Give us your questions on what you're looking at. Right now, speaking of Mar-a-Lago and kind of the future, now that we have a former president there, Tori Dunnan took a look at that, and we'll get reaction. But let's look at Tori Dunnan's piece about the immediate and perhaps longer-term future for Mar-a-Lago with former President Trump now there.
Mar-a-Lago now is a political statement.
A presidential footprint on Palm Beach. President Donald Trump now set to make the resort home on the heels of all the events that have unfolded in Washington, D.C.
The once quiet resort has now become a hotspot for politics. And that is having a big impact on people in Palm Beach County who either love or hate Donald Trump.
A worldwide political symbol.
Mar-a-Lago was built by Marjorie Merriweather Post, the heir to the Post cereal fortune. It was built in the 1920s. When she died in the early 1970s, she willed it to the federal government, hoping it would be a retreat for the president.
But it sat vacant.
And Donald Trump came along. And in the early 1980s, he started making early bids to buy Mar-a-Lago. And it's gone much further than I think Marjorie Merriweather Post would have ever dreamed. It's definitely a presidential retreat now.
During President Trump's term in office, it became a place for heads of state to visit, political rallies along Southern Boulevard, and the final destination of boat parades.
Mar-a-Lago for them has become a symbol as the Palm Beach County White House.
The future with President Trump residing at Mar-a-Lago has some concern about what that might look like from a non-political perspective.
I expect that the president will have lots of large gatherings that violate the CDC guidelines and violate our mask order. Absolutely.
State Representative Omari Hardy voiced his concerns about a New Year's Eve party at the private club.
I also expect to see the president here breaking our rules and doing things that really endanger the health and welfare of the residents of Palm Beach County.
And on the private side, questions arise about club membership.
Does somebody still want to associate themselves with the name Donald Trump? You know, it's a little bit when Richard Nixon became a disaster. A lot of people didn't want to associate themselves with the name Richard Nixon. It's possible that Trump went way too far, and as a result, people will not want to associate themselves with that name.
Now, only time will tell whether or not Mar-a-Lago goes back to the once quiet resort it was, or if it becomes a breeding ground for future political movements. Tori Dunnan, WPTV News Channel 5.
Mar-a-Lago is much a political dateline now, and what that will mean for Palm Beach County, as it has been a social dateline for so many decades. Brian Crowley, that guy sounded just like you, and we'll get reaction from all three of you in a moment. But we are told, Tori Dunnan, who was on the Intracoastal a short while ago near the Mar-a-Lago compound. And let's go to that report as well, and then we'll wrap it up with more reaction from all of you.
We're here along the Intracoastal near Mar-a-Lago, where there is heavy security presence. Boats obviously are pushed back at a certain distance. There have been some boats flying Trump flags that have come just to take a look as President Trump's motorcade just went over the Southern Boulevard Bridge and made its way to the property here on Palm Beach Island. I'm Tori Dunnan, back to you.
That just giving you an interesting perspective at home if you don't live in the Palm Beach County area. And of course, in our sprawling 5-county area, many of you do not, on up into Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Okeechobee counties. But nonetheless, for the last 4+ years, it's been an area for boat parades. And of course, an area when President Trump was there, where you saw huge waterborne security as well. Just an interesting note before we get reaction. The PBSO Sheriff Rick Bradshaw talked about that security. It's just an interesting dynamic. You come aboard Air Force One, then at the stroke of noon, still presidential or former presidential level security. But to the expert observer, you'll begin to see that presidential level, that bubble of security, that of course now all goes to President Biden. There'll still be significant security added around Mar-a-Lago. He'll have his own Secret Service detail, but it's just interesting the dynamics. In fact, because he did not attend the inauguration of President Joe Biden, it necessitated having 2 footballs, those bags that contain the nuclear codes. Up until noon, they were President Trump's to have the command authority over. At the stroke of noon, no longer in use, and it's a matter of national command authority. So the dynamics of government amidst all the angst of the last many weeks as you look on live toward Mar-a-Lago goes on. President Biden, now the commander-in-chief, freighted with the responsibility for the nation's nuclear arsenal, for its economic and COVID-related issues. Indeed, somebody once said, I heard a commentator once say, give me the limo and give me Air Force One. But the amount of problems put on any president's shoulders, and perhaps right now this, are almost beyond imagining, Brian. But to the future at Mar-a-Lago and to what President Biden now faces, your thoughts, and then Mr. Franklin, and then Mariana, and we'll wrap it up for this part of the day.
Well, let me just say that one of the interesting things about the Biden presidency is the fact that he's already said he doesn't want to run for a second term. And there's a lot of pluses and minuses to that, and that's something that they talk about in more depth in a future show. But and as far as Mar-a-Lago goes, well, you know, there are still folks in the town of Palm Beach who insist that he can't legally be a resident there because of the contract he signed with the town about having it as a resort. His son, Donald Jr., and his girlfriend have purchased homes in Admiral's Cove and Jupiter. His daughter and her husband have purchased property in Miami. Let's just say the Trump presence in Florida is going to be omnipresent for quite a while.
Mariana, and maybe we can put up footage of Governor DeSantis, who owes his seat in the governor's mansion to President Trump, which he surely acknowledges. You have huge political players in Florida like Marco Rubio, who will be up for re-election in 2022, has hopes, some say, for a 2024 presidential run. But with Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, consuming so much of the political oxygen in the Republican Party for now, as we look at Ron DeSantis, talk about how they calibrate politically, both of them. First with Mr. DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, who we see on screen, then Marco Rubio, as a for instance, Mariana.
It's going to be very interesting to see former President Trump take a backseat to a rally. He's synonymous with rallies. He's held rallies across the country during his reelection, even before his first election as president. And now it'll be interesting to see when DeSantis runs for governor again, how that will play out with Trump being kind of playing second fiddle to Governor DeSantis, who's running for reelection. Same thing with Marco Rubio, although there are rumors that Ivanka Trump wants to primary Rubio. So that will be interesting to see. Who will Trump back? Will he back in the primary? If his daughter's running, I'm sure he will back her. But a lot is to be untold and see what happens with the former president now in terms of him coming to Florida. How present will he be? Will he participate in the Palm Beach GOP party events? Will he show up and speak? How will he feel being the fact that he's no longer actually the president? I think that's really going to be very telling to see how he handles not being in the limelight the way he once was.
And of course, again, we have to note as a matter of record, the upcoming Senate impeachment trial, after being impeached by the House, now goes to the Senate, will say a lot about those potential political threats. Patrick Franklin, CEO and president of the Urban League of Palm Beach County, we thank you for being with us this day as our special guest. First, looking back to the Trump administration and its continued echoes on into the future, and then looking forward as we will go from this picture to some of the footage we have of President Biden and Kamala Harris. Your thoughts looking to the immediate past and to the immediate future, sir?
Well, the immediate past, we saw great division and divisiveness within our country amongst many people. I think it had a lot to do with the leadership at the top, and hopefully we will move past that now in a more unified body together and working together to solve some of these major issues we have of COVID. I think the upcoming administration should focus honestly with their top thing on COVID relief, on how do we bring relief from a monetary economic perspective to families and small businesses across this country. I think we need to look at a absolutely robust, comprehensive infrastructure plan that's going to bring jobs and a lot of other things to this country. We need this to correct our roads and bridges and everything else that need repair right now, but will bring needed jobs throughout this whole country. And then look at really a criminal justice reform and how much of a priority the Biden administration will put towards this, and how deep it will go within our system. So President Biden and Vice President Harris, they have a lot on the plate. There's a lot of expectations, but I think in order for it to be successful, we're going to need everyone to come together to help.
And let's see, President Biden, I believe a quote here just to kind of wrap that up. President Biden saying, "No time to waste when it comes to tackling the crises we face. That's why today I'm heading to the Oval Office to get right to work, delivering bold action and immediate relief." The 46th President of the United States saying for American families. To Patrick Franklin, CEO and President of the Urban League of Palm Beach County, to our analysts Brian Crowley and Mariana Mancuso, always with us. Greatly appreciate you being with us as Joseph Biden begins to put his signature on the presidency of the United States. And we'll see how that unfolds. And now former President Donald Trump, still many chapters yet to write for his legacy and his immediate future. And we'll see how all that plays out. And we'll have a front row seat as I said, Mar-a-Lago now becomes its own new political dateline for whatever future aspirations now former president will have, many of which will be decided, at least in part, by what's happening in Washington right now. But for now, as we move on, we'll have continuing coverage on air and online all day long. I can't thank the three of you enough for being with us. We'll close with these images from the United States Capitol. Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris, the President and Vice President of the United States on this Inauguration Day 2021. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.